Welcome to these skeletal system tutorials. There are going to be 3 lessons within this tutorial, and the aim of these 3 lessons is to build a foundation of knowledge of the skeletal system. And one of the first questions I'm asked when I teach these tutorials live and face to face is, why are we learning this information? Well, the better we understand the body, the better we can keep it fit and healthy for longer. What will also happen as well is, as you progress through these anatomy and physiology tutorials, I'll be referring to some of these names and to some of these parts of the body using these terms, and you'll obviously need to understand what I'm talking about. So that's the main reason that we need to learn about anatomy and physiology. So there are going to be 6 things that you're going to be learning. And that's going to be to understand the function of the skeletal system. So we're going to start off as a whole, the function of the skeletal system. Then we're going to start breaking it down, and we're going to start looking at major bones of the body. So we'll go through some of those to understand classification of bone cells and their function, to understand types of bone found in the body, and to understand types of joints found in the body, and then to understand the characteristics of synovial joints. What will also happen is, as I go through, is to help your understanding of the topic, I will start to relate exercise, activity to these parts of the body and some of the terms that I'm talking about. So again, it will give you a slightly better understanding of what we're talking about. To begin with the function of the skeleton or the skeletal system, it's, from a very broad perspective, it's our framework. As we go through life, it's going to grow, it's going to change, and that will be in accordance to the stresses we put upon it. So if we live a more sedentary lifestyle, it's going to grow in a certain way. If we live a more active lifestyle, it's going to grow in a different way. And again, we'll sort of highlight some of that as we go through these 3 lessons. Bone is also a major source of calcium and phosphate, and it actively plays a role in its balance throughout life. So what we've got with regards to the different functions of the skeleton, or the things that it does. So as I've mentioned, it's our framework. So this comes into it being a part of our support, and it gives a structural framework by supporting soft tissues. The next one is muscle attachment. So it provides points of attachment, and so when muscles contract, both concentrically and eccentrically, it's going to be pulling on bone, and that's going to produce movement. And again, that is going to play a role in how the bones grow and develop throughout our life. What we've also got is protection. So some of the vital organs of the body, it's going to be protecting. So you can see we've got the skull here protecting the brain. We've got the vertebral column protecting the spine. We've got the ribs that are going to be protected or protecting the heart and the lungs. You've got major blood vessels, and then you've also got the organs within the pelvis that are going to be protected as well. Next comes mineral homeostasis. So I've kind of alluded to this one ever so slightly, and that is we've got blood cell production. We'll talk about this a bit later on in the red marrow, and then you've got triglyceride storage in the yellow marrow as well. So that covers the 6 functions of the skeleton. There are 206 bones within the body, and here are, in some respects, most of them. I'm not expecting you to learn all of these from this short lesson, but we are going to be using this diagram throughout these lessons or tutorials, so you can start to pick up some of the names. Obviously, the major ones, you've got the skull or the cranium at the top, and then that will obviously be broken up into its parts. You've got the sternum and the ribs on the front of the body, and then obviously you can break that down into all of the ribs. So that would go as a part of that. You've got the spine, and you've got the different parts of the spine. Now again, we're going to be breaking that down and talking about that more in future tutorials, but for now we've got the spine there. Then you've got the pelvis, which is broken up, as you can see here, into ilium, pubis and ischium. So that is the three parts of the pelvis that you'll be or that we'll be talking about as we work through these lessons. If we then go back up to the arm, you've got the shoulder blade or scapula here. You've then got humerus at the top of the arm. What we've then got is the ulna and the radius in the lower part of the arm, and obviously you can see those the ulna and the radius in the forearm. Then we would come down into the hands, and then we've got carpals, metacarpals, and then you've got phalanges that would be described as the fingers. We come down to the leg. Major bone is the femur, so that's the big bone at the front. You've then got the kneecap. You've then got the big shin bone, which is the tibia, and then the smaller shin bone, which is the fibula. And then finally, when we come down to the foot, again, in some respects, very, very similar to the hand. So instead of carpals, we've got tarsals, then we've got the metatarsal bones, and then we've got the phalanges, which essentially is the same as the fingers down at the bottom. So those are the major bones of the body. Obviously, as we go through, we're gonna look more closely at each joint one at a time, and we'll learn more about the different bones that are there. But as I've mentioned at the start, this is very much just to start taking in some of the names, not expecting you to learn it all from this short tutorial, but the more you watch, the more it's going to make sense, and the more you watch the practical, and the more you listen to me talking about these parts of the body, the more it will start to sink in. But in some respects, for now, it's just recognise the names. So then, when they come up later, you will start to build an understanding of where they are, and in some respects, what they do. On this slide, we have types of bone cell. So we've talked about the skeleton as a whole. What we're now going to do is go down to, in some respects, its smallest part, which would be the bone cells. And you can see 4 bone cells in front of you. You've got osteogenic cells, osteoblast, osteocyte, and osteoclast. Now, these are all, in some respects, working together as we go throughout life. So the osteogenic cell, they're stem cells, of which specialized cells form. So the specialized cells are the osteoblast, the osteocyte, and the osteoclast. So this is a, let's call it a general cell, and let's call these specific cells. So these 3 specific cells are born from this general cell, if that makes sense. So the first one we come to is osteoblasts. Now, young osteocytes, and they produce new bone. So they are responsible for producing calcium deposits and also new bone following injury. So a easy way to remember it is osteoblast, which is a building of bone. So it's just taking the B out of that, and we're calling it a building of bone. So that's the cell that builds bone. When we come onto here, onto the osteocytes, as you can see, these are there to maintain the protein and mineral matrix. So when we talk about long bones in a second, we'll talk about different types of bone that are within it, and you'll then start to understand a little bit more about the protein and mineral matrix. So these cells have an elongated body and then thin dendrites, and the dendrites are these sort of thin projections coming off. Now they're there to sort of help maintain the bone. And then the final one sort of completes the set, which is the osteoclast. So again, I'm just going to highlight the C on that, because the osteoclasts are there for removing minerals from the protein matrix and rebuilding bone where necessary. These cells are able to create microscopic tunnels within bone. So what we've got for sort of ease of description is we've got building, maintaining, and then clearing, and you can say reabsorption, destruction. So as we age, so we are children, our bones start off as a cartilage. It then moves into sort of the hardened bone that we know. So that is going to have high osteoblast activity, because it's going to be building bone. The osteocytes will be maintaining, and there will be activity of clearing old bone, because these three are working all the time. It's just at different ratios. As we get to sort of being fully grown at say 25, these will be, let's just say, the dominant. These will slow down, and these will sort of, let's just say, maintain themselves. As we then get older, the osteoclasts will start to increase their activity, and if they increase too much, we will go towards osteoporosis, which would be sort of brittle bone disease. And these will, in some respects, slow down their work. So you'll be clearing more than you're building. So they're all working at the same time, but it will just be in different ratios. The more we can keep active, the more we stimulate these. But obviously the osteocytes and the osteoblasts will continue their work, because they need to be clearing any old or aged bone when they come about. But the more we stay active, the more our muscles are working and pulling on that bone. So those muscle attachments, where the tendon meets the bone, when the muscles contract, they pull on the tendon, which pulls on the bone, which will increase the activity here to strengthen that area. And again, walking, running, exercise in general, that will stimulate the osteoblast, keeping the bones strong. So that is the end of lesson 1, where we've so far talked about the bones of the body, or the skeleton, the bones of the body, and the functions of the skeleton and the bone cells. So what we'll do now is move on to part 2.